Welcome to this weekend's soccer predictions show. Last week we saw the EPL, Serie A, La Liga, and Liga, among others, kick off. This week the Bundesliga will follow suit as well, which personally is one of my favorite leagues to bet, as they usually have quite a bit of scoring. 1-1 was the most common score in the Bundesliga last year, followed by 2-1. 85% of games saw at least 2 goals, and 16 of 18 teams saw over 50% of their games hit the both teams to score bet. The average goals scored in Bundesliga matches was also 3.22. Last week's 4 parlays may not have been huge winners from an odds standpoint, but they still went 3-1, and at minus 114, minus 119, minus 141, we certainly did turn a profit, with only Chelsea failing to score against Man City stopping, an otherwise perfect weekend across those 4 different parlays. And we'll take a similar strategy this weekend, as we're still feeling out these teams and trying to create some small, simple parlays, generally three different options, giving you some action in many different games across the top leagues in Europe, and making sure that you're generally in action for most of those games, as we're generally looking for goals. So even if it's both teams to score at over 1.5, just a team to score, you're almost always in action right to the end of the game. So let's get into it. Be sure to give this video a like, subscribe, share, leave a comment down there in the comment section of what you're betting, and let's get to all of the picks for this weekend. We'll start off in La Liga on Friday. For a league not known for high-scoring games, La Liga came out with a bang in last week, in opening weekend, with 9 of 10 Week 1 games seeing goals coming from both sides. Only Espanyol failed to get on the score sheet. On Friday, we have Celta Vigo playing Valencia. Celta beat Alaves at home 2-1 last week, but Valencia lost at home 2-1 to Barcelona. Last season, Celta Vigo won 3-1 in Valencia, and they drew 2-2 in the second meeting. Celta's games were relatively high-scoring by the La Liga standards last year, averaging 2.71 goals per match. 71% of their games saw at least 2 goals, while 58% tied for the third most saw both teams to score. This could be a both teams to score or simply over 1.5. Next up, Sevilla, Villarreal. Sevilla drew away to Las Palmas 2-2. Villarreal were involved in their own 2-2 at home to Atletico Madrid. Last year was 1-1 in December, and 3-2 Villarreal recently in May. Other recent scores have been 2-1, 1-1, and 1-1. In 10 of 11 recent meetings, there's been at least 2 goals between these teams. These teams saw some of the most both teams to score games last season. Villarreal's games hitting that bet at 79%. That was the most. Sevilla, 58%, tied for the third most. The 3.42 goals per match in Villarreal's games last year was the second most, while the 2.68 for Sevilla was the 9th highest as well. Sevilla added 7 players this offseason, including Kelechi Iheanacho up top. Villarreal also made 7 signings, including ex-Arsenal man Nicolas Pepe, who was last playing in the Turkish league after the EPL didn't pan out. They did lose, though, top goal scorer Alexander Sorloth from last year, who scored against them last week for Atletico Madrid. Now, I do think this game could be a both teams to score, but again, Villarreal has lost their top player, so let's just go over 1.5 goals as well, and we'll round out the parlay on Friday with another simple over 1.5, hopefully between Borussia Monchengladbach and Bayer Leverkusen. Gladbach gets their season rolling after a poor 14th place finish last year. The 56 goals for was 7th. The 67 allowed was the 3rd worst. That all added up to 3.62 goals per game in their matches. That was the 3rd most. Leverkusen won the league, won the Pokal, went undefeated in 30 German games last season, and then won the German Super Cup last weekend versus Stuttgart. They drew 2-2 in regulation with goals from Boniface and Schick, despite playing most of the game down a man with a red card by Martin Terrier in the 37th minute. The game needed PKs, where Leverkusen went on to win 4-3. Most of that same team returns from last season for Leverkusen. They also added Girona captain Alex Garcia to the midfield. For all the goals Gladbach conceded last year, oddly, they were, though, the one team who shut out Leverkusen the only time last season in a 0-0 draw in January. The other meeting between them was 3-0 Leverkusen. I'd love to say both teams to score here, but Leverkusen kept the most clean sheets last season, and they just are a team that never loses right now. So it's likely a Leverkusen win, maybe a double chance in a parlay. Betting against the home team on a standalone Friday game is not always the best bet. We've seen a lot of home teams win last season. So let's go super safe with just another over 1.5 to get to even money in this parlay. So yeah, let's just do that. 3 over 1.5 games on Friday between Sevilla, Villarreal, Celta Vigo, Valencia, and Gladbach and Leverkusen. That will come in at even money. Now we'll move into the weekend here on Saturday. We have the EPL, Serie A, and Bundesliga, starting with Man City and Ipswich. This has to be one of the free squares on the bingo card this weekend. I should have bet Liverpool to beat Ipswich last weekend, but wanted to see how they played with a new coach and with Ipswich hosting their first EPL game. And it being an early game, I wanted to stay away, and it was 2-0 Liverpool. The Reds had 63% possession, 18 shots, 5 on target. Now Ipswich traveled to the Etihad, and there's no reason not to expect a similar result or worse when playing against Man City. City went to Stamford Bridge. They won 2-0, though it was 1-0 till the 84th last week in their kickoff game. I don't want to be getting into a range where I'm asking any team to win by 3 or 4, even though this should be a complete blowout by Man City. But in a parlay, Man City to win by 2 or score 2 or 3 goals seems like an easy choice. I'll choose the Man City to win by at least 2 on the spread. So Man City minus 1.5. And then we'll pair it with Inter Milan and Lecce. It was 2-2 draw for Inter away to Genoa last week. Lecce got thumped 4-0 at home to Atalanta on Monday, so they will have a little less rest. The current champs want to get their first win, and what better time than their home opener here against an opponent they've not lost to in 6 meetings, with the last 4 all being wins by scores of 4-0, 2-0, 2-0, and 2-1. So we'll go Inter Milan to win in this parlay. And finally, Freiburg and Stuttgart. It was 5-0 and 3-1 Stuttgart last year, and only once in 7 games has there not been at least 2 or more goals when these teams have met up. Go back further, and there's been 3 or more in 13 of 15 and 3 or more in 20 of 23. Obviously, we're going back far, but it seems like no matter the season, these teams do produce goals when they meet up. It's a new look Freiburg on the sidelines as Christian Streich has moved on, giving them their first new coach since 2011. That man will be Julian Schuster, a former Freiburg player, making his coaching debut. Freiburg's preseason saw them draw 2-2 and win 3-2 before a 4-0 Pokal win over a lower-level side last weekend. Last year, they were a mid-pack team in 10th, but actually struggled at home at just 7-5. That was the 15th best home record. Stuttgart had an incredible year, finishing second. This season started with a 2-2 draw versus Leverkusen in the German Super Cup last weekend before they went on to lose in PK. Stuttgart have lost, though, many key players in Gerasi, Anton, and Ito, but did hold on to 18-goal man Dennis Undav. They did bring in former Augsburg captain Emerdern Demirovic, who scored 15 goals last season, making him 6th overall in the scoring. Their preseason included an 8-1 win, 0-0 draw, and wins of 5-3, 5-2, and 4-0. Last year, Stuttgart only failed to score 3 times. Freiburg only failed to score 6. Now, if you wanted to make a case against goals, it could be that Stuttgart kept the second most clean sheets last season, behind Leverkusen with 12, and Freiburg weren't far behind, keeping 10 themselves. I still think we should see at least 2 goals like we usually see when these teams meet up. So we'll go over 1.5 Freiburg, Stuttgart, Inter Milan to win, Man City to win by at least 2. That comes in minus 112 odds. Parlay number 3, we'll go all Bundesliga here, all on Saturday. We have Hoffenheim and Holstein Kiel. Hoffenheim were 7th in the Bundesliga last season. Kiel were 2nd behind St. Pauli by 1 point in the 2 Bundesliga and earned promotion for their first trip to the top division. If you bet the Bundesliga last season, you liked betting on goals, then you know that Hoffenheim was probably one of your teams. The 3.88 goals per match in their games was the second highest. 97% of their games went over 1.5, 79% went over 2.5, 62% went over 3.5. 85% saw both teams to score, and they kept the fewest clean sheets of any team with just 6%. Hoffenheim did lose 16-goal man Maximilian Bayer, who left for Dortmund, but did retain 15-goal man Andrea Kramaric. So Hoffenheim probably will win here, but they never keep clean sheets. Now, maybe it'll be different this season, but I'll need to see it first. Let's just go over 1.5. Borussia Dortmund, Eintracht Frankfurt. Dortmund was just 5th in the Bundesliga last season, but they went all the way to the Champions League final. Dortmund lost 12-goal man Nicholas Füllkrug to West Ham, Marco Reus to the LA Galaxy, and as well as Mats Hummels. Dortmund have made many signings, though, this season. Center back Waldemar Anton from Stuttgart, midfielder Pascal Grob from Brighton, forward Maximilian Bayer from Hoffenheim, forward Serhu Gerasi from Stuttgart, and right back Jan Koto from Girona on loan. So there's lots of changes this year for the black and yellow, and that's not counting new manager Nuri Sahin, who replaces Edin Terzic, who quit 2 weeks after taking Dortmund to the Champions League final. Sahin won the title with Dortmund as a player way back in the 2010-11 season, back when Jurgen Klopp was still in charge. Eintracht Frankfurt were 6th last season, qualifying for the Europa League at 13, 11, and 10, scoring 58, allowing 52, with an average of 3.24 goals per match in their game, that being the 6th most, and both teams to score hitting 68% of the time, tied for the 3rd most. They lost star defender William Pacho to PSG, but did bring in Can Azun, who had 19 goals and 4 assists in 32 games in all competitions for Nuremberg last season. The trend here, when these teams meet up, is generally Dortmund wins in high-scoring games, It was 3-3 and 3-1 Dortmund last year, and Dortmund are 5-1-6 undefeated in their last 6, with other scores being 4-0, 2-1, 3-2, and 5-2. After a 1-1 draw and 4-0 loss to start the preseason, Dortmund won 3-2, 2-0, and 4-1. The 2-0 came over Aston Villa, and the last 4-1 was in the Pokal. But then Frankfurt just won 4-1 in the Pokal themselves as well, and they have won 6 of 7 games prior to this kickoff, outscoring their opponents by an incredible 40-7. Obviously, many lower-level opponents. Dortmund just added 2 of the top 5 scorers from the league last season, that being 44 goals. But they will be out Gerassi here as he's injured with a knee up until sometime in September. Frankfurt ended last season with just 1 win in 9 games. On the road, they often struggled with just 4 road wins in their past 28 Bundesliga games as well. I do want to say both teams scoring here or maybe a Dortmund win, but there's just a lot of changes all over the place. So let's just ask Dortmund not to lose and do the double chance in this parlay, so Dortmund win or draw. But certainly if you wanted a Dortmund win, Dortmund to score 2, maybe both teams to score, those could all be options as well. Next up, RB Leipzig and Bochum. Leipzig finished 4th last season, while Bochum just avoided relegation in 16th. At home, Leipzig also had the 4th best record at 11-4-2, outscoring opponents 40-12. Whereas away from home is where Bochum struggled most. They had the 12th best home record, but the 18th, that being the worst away record at 2-4-11, where they were outscored 45-16. Leipzig brings back both Lois Openda and Benjamin Sesko, who had 24 and 14 goals each, and that should be too much for Bochum here playing on the road. So we'll go Leipzig to win, paired with the Dortmund double chance, and Hoffenheim, Holstein, Kiel over 1.5 at -127. Now we'll move into Sunday here, and we'll go to the EPL, Serie A, and La Liga. It's Wolves and Chelsea. Both teams suffered 2-0 defeats on opening weekend. Chelsea home to Man City, Wolves away to Arsenal. Only Everton had a worse week 1, losing 3-0. When these teams met last season, the scores were 2-1 and 4-2 for Wolves. Both finished the season seeing 66% of their games hit the both teams to score bet. Only 4 teams saw that hit at a higher rate. Let's bet on that again happening here. Both teams to score, Wolves and Chelsea. Next, Torino, Atalanta. After a poor showing in the Super Cup against Real Madrid, Atalanta responded by thumping Lecce 4-0 on Monday with 2 goals each from Marco Bresciani and Matteo Retucci. So it's a shorter turnaround for them compared to Torino, who drew AC Milan on Saturday. They were actually leading that game, though, 2-0 until late Milan goals in the 89th and 95th minutes. So it was a decent start for Torino. Despite Torino games historically being lower scoring, that wasn't the case last week, and it's rarely the case when they play Atalanta. Both won 3-0 at home last year. Other scores between them have been 2-1, 3-1, 4-4, 2-1, 3-3, 4-2, 7-0, and 3-2 over the last number of seasons. This looks like a both teams to score bet for me. Maybe both teams to score an over 2.5 or simply over 1.5. Those 2 selections alone would get us to plus 121, which to me is more than good enough as on its own. But we have another game just dangling here that looks like an easy parlay piece, and hopefully I'm not going to jinx it, but we can go to Real Madrid and Valladolid. Valladolid was shutting out Espanyol 1-0 on match day 1, while Madrid found themselves in a shocking 1-1 draw on the island in Mallorca after a dominating Super Cup win against Atalanta. It was definitely a shock result, but Mallorca is a tough place to play, and I did feel like it might not be as easy as it looked, which is why I only included Madrid to score in one of last week's parlays. Madrid is not used to not winning. Even draws aren't that common, but still, they were undefeated in 28 games with only 1 loss in extra time in the Copa del Rey in their last 50. They'll be looking for a big response here after only getting the draw last week, this being their home opener, and this could be the perfect opponent. Madrid won 2-0 and 6-0 in their most recent meetings back in the 2022-2023 season. Valladolid was relegated that season, but they've made a quick return after finishing 2nd behind Leganes in the Segunda last season. Certainly, if you're betting this alone, you'll need to bring in the spread here, Madrid to win by 2 or 3, or to keep a clean sheet, or get creative in some sort of same-game parlay. For this parlay, because we're already at plus 121, I'm just going to throw Madrid in there to win. Obviously, that doesn't add much, but does bring us up to plus 148. The other option could be to ask them to score 2 or to win by 2 or more to make this even better. But at plus 151 for Madrid to win, and Torino Atalanta over 1.5, and Wolves and Chelsea, both teams to score, that works for me quite nicely. One more here on Sunday, Bundesliga and La Liga. It's Wolfsburg and Bayern Munich. It was a 12th place finish for Wolfsburg last season, and shockingly, a 3rd place finish for Bayern Munich, stopping a run of many, many titles for them. Harry Kane debuted in Germany and led all scorers with 38 goals, but that wasn't enough this year. Vincent Kompany has been tasked with the task of getting Bayern Munich back to the top of the table as the new head coach, and given the task of winning some trophies, as last year was the first time since the 2011-12 season that Bayern didn't win something. This offseason, they bring in Olise, Ito, and Polina, among others. So far, they've dominated in friendlies with a 1-1 draw and wins of 14-1, 2-1, 3-2, 4-0, and 4-0. In their only competitive game, they beat lower tier side 4-0 in the Pokal. It was 2-0 and 2-1 Bayern last season, and they are undefeated 18-2-0 versus Wolfsburg in the past 20 meetings. So certainly they could be an option for a win in this bet. Wolfsburg's games didn't see a ton of goals last year at 2.85. That was the fourth fewest, but at 4.09, Bayern's were the most goal-heavy in the league. They can always score, but last year they were certainly capable of conceding in many games. So Bayern never loses here. They certainly could win. This could be 3, maybe 4 goals in this game. You can see the trend in many of these parlays. You can also just go over 1.5. And we'll pair it with Atletico Madrid and Girona. Atleti drew 2-2 in Villarreal, but one of their goals that they conceded was an own goal. Girona drew 1-1 away to Betis with only 2 shots on target. Both teams won at home last season. Girona 4-3, Atleti 3-1. Atleti did lose their last home game last season 4-1, but at home they're usually as close to a lock for a win as there can be in their last 30 home La Liga games at 26-2-2. After their best ever finish, third, and a place in the Champions League, Girona do need to adjust, though, after losing many players like Savinho, Artem Dobnik, and Alex Garcia this offseason. Atleti, on the other hand, have brought in Julian Alvarez, Alexander Sorloth, Conor Gallagher, and even managed to ship out the underperforming João Felix to Chelsea. Both teams score, certainly an option here, but Girona is not the same team they were last season, so instead, we could bet for an Atleti win or Atleti to score over 1.5 in case this does turn into a shootout. We'll go Atletico Madrid over 1.5, paired with the over 1.5 with Wolfsburg and Bayern Munich at minus 117. We'll leave it at that here. We have covered 14 different games, 5 different parlays that win or lose. You should be in a position to cash all game, as you know, we're just betting on a lot of these games to get goals here, and we're not asking for anything too far out of reach. So hopefully we all get some winners here. What do you like, though, in any of these games, other leagues? Share those down there in the comments. Also, stay tuned for this weekend's MLS and Leagues Cup picks in another video coming soon.